The girl who spoke to the monster. The rain didn't fall in Red Haven. It whispered. It slid down the crooked roofs and the iron railings like it was trying not to wake the city. The fog was thicker near the docks, where the old salt and coal smell never left, and where people like Mara Voss learned to breathe shallow so the cold wouldn't hurt as much. Mara kept her head down as she scrubbed the marble steps of the courthouse annex, an extra job she did after cleaning rooms at the Harbor Lantern Inn. Her hands were raw. Her shoulders ached. But she still hummed softly because her daughter loved that sound, and because humming was the only way Mara remembered she still had a heart. Faster, the foreman snapped without looking at her. Guests arrive at dawn. I don't pay you to daydream. Mara didn't answer. She never answered. In Red Haven, a woman with a child and no husband learned quickly. Words were expensive and people charged interest. Behind her, little Eloan, 6 years old, wearing a coat patched at the elbows and optimism like armor, sat on a crate and rocked her legs. Her curls were messy, her eyes bright. She watched her mother work like she was watching a hero. Mama, Eloan whispered, your hands are bleeding again. Mara smiled without lifting her head. Just tired hands, Bertie. They'll be okay. Eloan frowned, then reached into her pocket and pulled out half a sugar bun someone at the inn had dropped and pretended not to see. Eat. Mara shook her head. You eat. Eloan's chin tipped up, stubborn as a tiny queen. If you don't eat, you'll fade. Like the candles. Mara froze for a heartbeat. The word fade landed wrong. Too sharp. Too specific. Like it belonged to a story she hadn't told her child. Before she could ask what Eloan meant, a loud laugh echoed from the street. A group of well-dressed men and women, masks in their hands from some late-night party, strolled past the annex steps. One of the men, a merchant's son with polished boots and a cruel grin, pointed at Mara's uniform. Look, he said loudly. The city's little scrub rat brought her pup. The others laughed. Eloan stiffened, but Mara kept her head down. She scrubbed harder as if the stone could swallow the insult. The merchant's son leaned closer, voice dripping with mock pity. Tell me, washerwoman, does your child know she'll grow up to be nothing too? Or are you still feeding her fairy tales? Mara's throat tightened. She felt the familiar heat of humiliation rise in her cheeks, then the colder thing underneath, the fear that Eloan would learn to hate herself. But Eloan stood up. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She stepped forward like she'd practiced bravery in secret. My mommy is not nothing, Eloan said, her voice small but steady. She's the strongest person in Red Haven. The merchant's son blinked, surprised the child dared speak to him. Then he laughed again louder. Strong? Look at her. She's a rag with bones. Eloan's eyes didn't drop. You're loud, she said simply. People who are loud are usually scared inside. The group went quiet for a second, shocked into silence. Then one of the women snorted. What an insolent little thing. The merchant's son leaned down until his face was close to Eloan's. Careful, pup. In Red Haven, little girls vanish all the time. Mara's blood turned to ice. She dropped her brush and pulled Eloan behind her, heart hammering. Don't speak to my child, she said, voice trembling but firm. The merchant's son straightened, bored already. Then teach her her place. They walked off, leaving laughter behind like spilled ink. Mara stood there shaking, hand over Eloan's shoulder, trying to breathe. Eloan looked up. Mama, she whispered, if a monster is trapped, is it still a monster? Mara stared at her daughter. What kind of question is that? Eloan glanced toward the back of the courthouse annex, where a narrow alley disappeared into fog. Because I heard someone crying. Not crying like babies. Crying like stones. Mara's skin prickled. The courthouse annex had old underground storage. People said the city used to keep dangerous things beneath government buildings back when Red Haven still feared the dark. Mara Voss, the foreman barked from the steps. Stop staring into space. Mara swallowed and picked up her brush again. Eloan, she said softly, you stay where I can see you. Eloan nodded. Then, when Mara turned back to scrubbing, Eloan did the thing children do when they believe the world is waiting to be fixed. She slipped away. The alley behind the annex smelled of wet stone and rust. Eloan's small boots splashed through shallow puddles. The fog wrapped around her like a scarf. She followed the sound she'd heard, low, rough, like someone trying to hold pain in their teeth. A metal door sat half-hidden behind stacked crates, marked with a warning sign she couldn't read. A thin stream of cold air leaked from the seam. Eloan pressed her ear to it. A voice, barely a voice, rasped from inside. Not words. Not yet. Just a sound that felt older than the buildings above it. Eloan's hand moved on its own as if kindness had gravity. She pushed at the door. It wasn't locked. The stairwell beyond spiraled downward. Eloan hesitated only long enough to whisper, "Mama says don't go where I can't come back, but Mama also says help is help." Then she descended. The further she went, the colder it became, like the air was forgetting how to be human. The walls changed from brick to ancient stone. Chains hung from iron hooks. Old symbols, scratched into the rock, looked like handwriting from a language that didn't want to be remembered. At the bottom, a barred cell waited. And inside it, slumped against the stone like a fallen statue, was a man. He was not human. Eloan knew this the way she knew rain was wet. His hair was dark, almost blue-black, messy from weeks, months, of captivity. His skin was pale as moonlight. And his wrists were bound in silver shackles etched with holy script. The silver didn't just hold him. It burned him, leaving angry marks. He lifted his head slowly. His eyes opened, deep crimson with a strange violet ring, like a sunset trapped in blood. Eloan didn't scream. She walked closer until she was just outside the bars and crouched, studying him with the serious focus of a child examining a wounded bird. The man's lips parted. His voice dragged itself out like it didn't want to exist. "Go." Eloan shook her head. "You're hurt." I said, "Go." His fingers clenched. The chains clinked. "If I break, you will die." Eloan tilted her head. "My mommy says crying washes the sad away. But you have to stop eventually, or you drown." The man flinched as if her innocence was a blade. "I'm not crying," he rasped. Eloan leaned closer, small hands curling around the bars. "Then why does it sound like your heart is crying?" The man stared at her like he hadn't seen a child in 100 years. Like he'd forgotten what softness was. "What is your name?" Eloan asked. Silence stretched. Finally he whispered, "Kale?" Eloan smiled, like she'd been introduced to someone at a tea party. "Hi Kale. I'm Eloan. Don't cry, sir. My mommy will save you." The vampire's eyes widened. The air trembled as if something powerful shifted awake. "You don't understand," he said, voice rougher now, anger threaded with fear. "Your mother should never come here." Eloan's smile faded into determination. "My mommy fixes everything. She fixes my shoes. She fixes broken buttons. She fixes hurts." Her eyes flicked to the silver biting into his skin. "That looks like a hurt." Kale's jaw tightened. "I'm not a hurt. I'm a punishment." Eloan frowned. "Did you do something bad?" His gaze slid away, shadows pooling under his eyes. "I was born." Eloan didn't like that answer. She stood up, hands on her hips. "That's not bad." Kale laughed just once. A dry, bitter sound like a door closing. "You're brave, little girl." Eloan nodded like that was obvious. "I'm my mommy's girl." Then she turned to go, as if the decision was already made. Kale's voice sharpened. "Wait." Eloan paused. "If you bring her," he whispered, "they will punish her too." Eloan looked back over her shoulder, eyes bright with a strange certainty. "Then they're going to be very sorry." And she ran back up the stairs, leaving the vampire king in the dark, watching the place where she'd stood, feeling something he hadn't felt in centuries. Oh. Up above, Mara was still scrubbing, still trying to swallow humiliation and survive the night. Eloan burst from the alley, breathless. "Mama!" Mara spun, panic hitting her like a wave. "Eloan, where did you go?" Eloan grabbed Mara's hand with both of hers. "Mama, there's a man under the courthouse. He's chained. He's hurting. He told me to go away, but his eyes looked lonely." Eloan's voice dropped into urgent whispers. "He's a vampire, Mama. A real one." Mara stared at her daughter, heart stuttering. "No," Mara said automatically. "No, those are stories." Eloan shook her head so hard her curls bounced. "He's real. And he's fading." That word again. Mara's mouth went dry. She looked at her daughter's face. No mischief, no exaggeration. Only truth and compassion. And something inside Mara, something tired and bruised but still alive, remembered what it felt like to be trapped in a life that wasn't hers. "Show me," Mara whispered. Eloan's face lit up like dawn. "Okay." Mara took off her apron, wiped her hands, and tucked the sugar bun into Eloan's pocket. Then she glanced at the bustling street, the courthouse steps, the indifferent city, before following her child into the fog. She didn't know she was walking into a war between bloodlines. She didn't know she was stepping toward a man the city had buried on purpose. But she knew one thing. If someone had been chained and forgotten, then kindness was not foolish. Kindness was rebellion. The mother who didn't look away. The metal door groaned when Mara pushed it open. The stairwell breathed cold air into her face like a warning. Eloan held the lantern they'd stolen from the maintenance closet, tiny hands trying to be strong. "Mama," Eloan whispered, "don't be scared." Mara wanted to laugh. She wanted to cry. Instead, she squeezed her daughter's hand and stepped down. At the bottom, the bars appeared, and behind them, Cale lifted his head, eyes catching lantern light like gemstones in deep water. He stared at Mara the way storms stare at ships. Mara forced her voice to stay steady. "My daughter says you're hurt." Cale's lips curled, not quite a smile, not quite a snarl. "Your daughter is reckless." "She's kind," Mara corrected softly. "There's a difference." Cale's gaze flicked to Eloan, then back to Mara, sharpened. "You should take her away. If the hunger breaks through." Mara stepped closer until the lantern light revealed the burns on his wrists, the dried blood at the corners of his mouth, the exhaustion carved into his posture. Mara's stomach turned, not with fear, with anger. "Who did this?" she asked. Cale's expression hardened. "People who wear clean coats and call themselves protectors." Mara swallowed. That sounded familiar. Eloan pressed her face to the bars. "Sir Cale, my mommy brought you food." Mara pulled out a small cloth bundle, bread, cheese, and a flask of water. Cale stared at it like it was a joke the world was telling. "That won't help." Mara's hands tightened around the bundle. "Then tell me what will." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy with old rules and older shame. Cale closed his eyes, voice rough as stone. "Blood." Eloan blinked. "Like a nosebleed?" Mara went very still. She'd heard stories. Everyone in Red Haven had, whispers about disappearing fishermen and pale shadows near the docks. But she also knew hunger. She knew what it did to a person when the world decided they didn't deserve to live. Cale's voice dropped lower. "I won't take from you." Mara lifted her chin. "I didn't ask if you would. I asked what you need." Cale looked at her then, really looked, and something in his eyes shifted like surprise had cracked through centuries of cold. "You don't know what you're offering," he murmured. Mara's throat tightened. "I know what it's like to be judged, starved, and trapped." Her voice wavered. "If you're a monster, then why did you tell my child to run?" Cale's jaw clenched. Because once, long ago, someone had called him monster, until he started believing it. Mara's mind moved fast. Practical. Determined. She dug in her pocket and pulled out a small sewing knife. Eloan gasped. "Mama." "I'm not doing anything dangerous," Mara whispered, though her hands trembled. "Just enough." Cale surged forward until the chains yanked him back, silver flashing. "No." Mara held up her arm, making the smallest cut, barely a line. A bead of blood rose. The scent hit Cale like lightning. His eyes went darker. His breathing changed, deeper, rougher. But he didn't lunge. He shook, fighting himself like the monster was locked behind his ribs. Mara stepped closer, offering her arm through the bars with calm she didn't fully feel. "Drink." "Not to hurt me," her voice softened, "to live." Cale stared at her wrist like it was both salvation and sin. Eloan whispered, "Please. If you die, that's not fair." Something broke in Cale's expression. Not control, pride. He lowered his mouth to Mara's skin. He didn't bite. He pressed his lips to the small wound with a reverence that made Mara's breath catch. The pull of it was strange, cold and intimate, like winter kissing her pulse. He took only a few drops. Then he pulled back abruptly, eyes blazing with horror at himself. Mara's cut closed, smooth, healed, like her skin had never been broken. Mara stared. "What?" Cale's voice was a whisper. "You shouldn't have done that." Eloan beamed like she'd seen a miracle. "See? Mommy saves everyone." Cale didn't smile. He looked at Mara with something heavier. "You just bound yourself to me," he said quietly. "Blood given freely ties fate." Mara swallowed hard. "I don't believe in fate." Cale's gaze dropped to the healed skin. "It believes in you." Above them, faint footsteps echoed, someone moving in the building. Cale's head snapped up. "Someone's coming." Mara grabbed Eloan. "We have to go." Eloan pressed her fingers to the bars. "We'll come back." Cale watched them retreat into the stairwell, lantern light fading. He hadn't been fed in months. But what warmed him wasn't blood. It was the fact that a woman who had every reason to fear him chose compassion anyway. The usurper's smile. The next day, Red Haven felt different to Mara, like every shadow might be listening. At the inn, the manager shoved a mop into her hands. "New guests in the royal suite tonight. You'll do the floors." The royal suite? Mara echoed. The manager sneered. Didn't you hear? Lord Sable Sterling is hosting a charity gala. Big money, big masks, big speeches about saving the poor. People like you exist so people like him can feel holy. Mara's stomach sank. Sterling. Even the name sounded like a blade. That night, Mara returned to the courthouse basement, her heart pounding, Eloan's hand clutched in hers. Cale was awake, waiting as if he'd never stopped watching the stairs. You came back, he said, voice stronger now. Mara nodded. You said someone did this. Who? Cale's eyes narrowed. My blood brother. The one wearing my city like a crown. Mara inhaled sharply. Sable Sterling. Cale's mouth tightened. He calls himself protector. Philanthropist. He smiles while he tightens chains. Eloan whispered, he's the bad guy? Cale looked at her, gentler than before. He's the kind of bad that convinces people he's good. Mara's anger flared. He raised rents again. Kicked families into the street. Cale's gaze burned. Because I'm not there to stop him. Mara stared at the silver shackles. How do we free you? Cale exhaled slowly. The shackles are consecrated silver, sealed by an artifact, an obsidian key. As long as Sable holds it, I can't break these chains. Mara's mind clicked into place. Your gala. The royal suite. Masks. Cale's eyes sharpened. No. Mara met his gaze. Yes. Cale leaned forward until his face was close to the bars, voice low and urgent. Sable will sense you. My blood touched yours. The bond will scent mark you like smoke. Mara swallowed. Then teach me how to hide it. Cale stared at her, shocked by her calm. Mara's voice trembled only slightly. I've been invisible my whole life. Let me use that. Cale's silence was heavy, then he reached up, wincing as silver burned him, and slid a ring from his finger. Dark stone. Old crest. He pushed it through the bars. If you are cornered, show this to the oldest servant at Sterling House, Madame Varel. She served my mother. She'll recognize it. Eloan gasped. It's like a treasure. Cale's gaze softened. It's a promise. If you do this, you don't do it alone. Mara tucked the ring into her apron pocket. I'll bring the key. Cale's eyes locked on hers, intense and conflicted. Mara Voss, kindness like yours starts wars. Mara whispered back, then maybe Redhaven needs one. The masquerade of lies. Sterling House glowed like a jewel in the fog, electric lights blazing, music spilling into the night, carriages arriving with laughter and perfume. Mara entered through the servants' corridor wearing a plain uniform and a bowed head. No one noticed her. That was the point. In the kitchen, the head cook shoved trays at her. Floors, linens, whatever. Stay out of sight. Mara nodded, eyes scanning doors, hallways, guards. Eloan was hidden safely at a neighbor's, but Mara felt her daughter's courage like a heartbeat in her chest. Upstairs, masked guests danced and praised Sable Sterling's generosity. Mara heard it all while she carried laundry baskets. How noble he was, how kind, how dangerous the old legends of Cale had been. Mara's jaw tightened. Kindness shouldn't come with chains. She found Madame Varel near a linen closet, an older woman with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Mara's hands trembled as she showed the ring. Madame Varel's breath hitched. No. Mara whispered, he lives. He's imprisoned beneath the courthouse. The woman's eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. The true king. Mara leaned closer. I need the obsidian key. Madame Varel's face hardened. Sable wears it inside his vest pocket tonight. He wants to look pure for the crowd. Her gaze flicked down the hall. His private study. East wing. Third door. Mara's heart pounded. If I don't come back. You will, Madame Varel said fiercely. Because Redhaven has waited too long. Mara moved through the corridors like a shadow. She reached the study door, locked. She pulled out her hairpin. Click. Inside, candlelight flickered over books, maps, and a glass case with an obsidian key resting on velvet like a sleeping snake. Mara reached for it, and a voice behind her purred, looking for something, little maid? She turned. Sable Sterling stood in the doorway, mask off, smile perfect, eyes dark with hunger that wasn't human. Mara forced her voice steady. I was told to fetch a ledger. Sable's smile widened. You smell like something old. Mara's blood iced. Sable stepped closer. Tell me, did you visit the basement lately? Mara's mind raced. What? Run. Fight. But she lifted her chin. Yes. Sable blinked, amused by her honesty. And? Mara's voice cut clean. And I saw what you did to him. Sable sighed like she'd disappointed him. People worship monsters when monsters wear crowns. I simply removed a problem. Mara's hands clenched. You removed a person. Sable tilted his head. Oh, sweetheart. He's not a person. He's a storm. Mara stepped sideways, closer to the case. Then why are you afraid of him? For the first time, Sable's smile faltered. Mara snatched the key. Sable moved fast, inhumanly fast, grabbing her wrist. Give it back. Pain flared. Mara's knees buckled. Then she heard Kale's voice in her memory. Kindness starts wars. Mara looked Sable in the eye. No. She smashed the key case with her elbow, grabbed the obsidian key tighter and yanked free, her skin tearing but her will unbroken. Sable's eyes flashed. You'll regret that. Mara ran. She ran through the masked laughter, the lies, the glittering hypocrisy, down servant stairs, through kitchens into fog. Behind her, Sable's voice echoed, Find her. Mara didn't stop. Because somewhere in the dark, a king was waiting. And a little girl believed her mother could save him. The king who chose mercy. Mara burst into the courthouse annex shaking, soaked, breath tearing her throat. Eloan was there. She'd slipped out of the neighbors and waited, stubborn as dawn. Mama, she cried, hugging Mara's waist. Did you do it? Mara lifted the obsidian key, hands trembling. Yes. They descended together. Kale rose as they approached, eyes widening at the sight of the key. Mara? Mara's voice cracked. Open them. Kale's hands shook as he pressed the key to the shackles. The holy script flared, then dimmed. The silver fell away. Kale collapsed to his knees like gravity had finally remembered him. He inhaled, deep, hungry air, then looked up at Mara with a gaze that felt like a vow. You freed me, he whispered. Mara swallowed. No. I gave you a chance to free yourself. Kale stood slowly. The shadows around him moved, listening. Eloan stepped forward and took his cold hand like it was normal. See? Mommy saves everyone. Kale looked down at her, expression softening in a way that broke something inside Mara. Then, the door above slammed. Sable Sterling's voice drifted down like poison honey. How sweet. A reunion. Kale's entire body went still. Mara's heart hammered. He followed me. Kale's eyes darkened, not with hunger but with fury held on a leash. Stay behind me. Sable descended the stairs, coat immaculate, smile sharp. Guards behind him. Torches. Confidence. There you are, Sable said to Kale as if speaking to a misbehaving pet. I was starting to miss my trophy. Kale's voice was calm, terrifying. You starved your own blood. Sable shrugged. For the greater good. You were too soft. You protected the poor. You punished the powerful. You made me look cruel. Kale stepped forward. You are cruel. Sable's eyes flicked to Mara. And you, little maid, do you know what you've done? You've tied yourself to a monster. Mara lifted her chin. No. I tied myself to a man who refused to hurt a child even when he was starving. Sable's smile twitched. He'll hurt you eventually. Kale's voice dropped lower. No. Sable laughed. You expect me to believe the old king has a conscience? Kale moved, fast enough that the torches flickered, and in a blink he was standing between Sable and Mara like a wall of night. You want fear. Kale whispered. I can give you fear. Sable's guards raised weapons. Mara hugged Eloan close. Kale lifted a hand. The shadows in the corners rose like living silk, wrapping around the guards' wrists, pinning them gently but firmly. No broken bones. No gore. Just undeniable power. Sable's expression finally cracked, panic flashing beneath arrogance. Kale stepped closer until Sable was forced back against the wall. You chained me because you wanted a city without consequences, Kale said. You wanted the poor to stay silent. Sable sneered, trying to recover. And what? You'll kill me? In front of a child. Kale paused. His gaze flicked to Eloan. Eloan looked back, unafraid. Mama says, hurting people because your hurt makes you small. Kale's jaw tightened. Then he did the thing Sable never expected. He let Sable live. Kale turned to the guards and spoke clearly, voice carrying up the stairwell, out into the world. You will tell the council what you saw. You will tell them Sable Sterling imprisoned the rightful protector of Red Haven. You will tell them he raised rents, starved families and hid behind charity. Sable spat. They won't believe you. Kale's eyes gleamed. Then I'll show them. By dawn, Red Haven woke to a different kind of fog, one filled with whispers of truth. Kale didn't burn the city. He healed it. He forced rent rollbacks. He reopened the dock jobs. He returned stolen wages through discreet, anonymous envelopes, because he knew pride could feel like a cage to the poor too. And when people asked why the legendary vampire king cared about humans, Cale gave them only one answer. Because one human woman looked at me in chains, and saw someone worth saving. Mara didn't become rich overnight. She didn't wake up in silk with a crown on her head. Her life changed in smaller, truer ways. Food appeared at her door. The inn manager stopped shouting. The foreman lowered his eyes when she passed. People started saying, "Thank you," like the word was new. And Cale kept his distance at first, like he didn't trust himself to want too much. But nights came when the city quieted, and he stood outside the Harbor Lantern Inn in the fog, watching Mara through the window as she braided Alohan's hair. One evening Mara stepped outside and found him waiting. He didn't flirt. He didn't make promises wrapped in pretty words. He bowed his head, vampire king to washerwoman, and said simply, "I owe you everything." Mara's voice was soft. "No. You owe Red Haven better." Cale lifted his gaze, violet-ringed eyes steady. "Then let me build it, with you." Mara's throat tightened. "I'm just a mother trying to survive." Cale stepped closer, careful not to frighten her. "No." His voice was quieter now, almost human. "You're the reason I remembered what mercy feels like." Mara looked at him, this powerful, feared creature, and realized something that made her chest ache. He wasn't saved by her blood. He was saved by her respect. Slowly, Cale reached into his coat and pulled out the obsidian crest, his symbol, then placed it into Mara's palm like a sacred thing. "This city will see you," he said. "Not because you belong to me," his voice firmed, "but because you belong to yourself." Inside, Alohan pressed her face to the glass and grinned like she'd been right all along. Mara laughed, small, disbelieving, warm. And in the fog-wrapped city of Red Haven, the vampire king who once believed he was only a monster began learning, day by day, action by action, how to be a protector again. Not through fear. Through love that moved slowly, patiently like dawn.